Hello and welcome to the shop. This week I have an interesting challenge. I got an order for 8 identical pins for a hand-built workbench. Now, normally I don't do this kind of work, but it is a challenge for me, which is why I said absolutely, I'd be glad to. My customer gave me a diagram that shows what they need. Basically a 2-inch pin with a 3/4 inch shaft, 1/2 inch conical section coming down to a 1/4 inch at the end, and a 1/2 inch wide, 1.5 inch head. Pretty simple, except I've got to make 8 of them and they all need to be the same. How am I going to do that? Well, first I'm going to take a book from production turners, production builders, and I'm going to make myself a story stick. What I have here is a piece of white oak that is S4S, meaning that it is square and surfaced on all 4 sides. I bought this at a big box store because I do not have a planer or a joiner, and sometimes I do need square wood, and this was the quickest, easiest way for me to get it without going through some real interesting evolutions with my table saw. To do this, I'm going to need several tools. I'm going to need a good, accurate T-square. I'm going to need a center punch, and then I'm going to need a 3/4 inch, a 1.5 inch, and a 1/4 inch drill bit or Forstner bits. So what I'm going to do is lay out my pin here in the appropriate measurements on the center of this board. Then I'm actually going to run this board through the table saw and cut it in half so that I have a stick with the appropriate measurements that I can just reach out and touch on the lathe and see, does this work? Is this the right dimension? Is this the right length? And does it fit? So here's my story stick. I've got a 1.5 inch hole. That's going to give me a measurement. There is 2 inches distance between that and the 3/4 inch hole, which is the size of the shaft of the pin. The 1/4 inch hole has a 1/2 inch between it and the 3/4 inch hole, so that's my other distance, the thickness of the head of the pin, and also the thickness at the base, at the bottom, at the end of the pin where it tapers down. So here is essentially the measurement of the entire piece all in one place, and when I cut it down the middle on the table saw, right on one side, on this side of the line, on this side, what I'm going to do is, making, of course, allowance for the curve of the saw, that make that saw ride right there. What I'm going to do is cut this in half, and on this side right here, I'm going to have a piece of wood that has every measurement I need to make repeated turnings at these dimensions. Now you'll notice I'm a little bit outside of that line. I cut it a little bit on the long side. That gives me a perfect opportunity to take a couple minutes with a shoulder plane and just plane this down to exactly the dimension I need it on the width. So I'm going to double check, make sure that I have my marking. It looks all good. So I'm just going to plane this down as carefully as I can to get it to the right dimension. Okay, so I've made myself a measuring tool, a story stick, that's going to show me each step of each piece as I make these pins. And then I have milled up some 2x2 elm spindle blanks, resawing on my table saw. If I had a bandsaw, I would use the bandsaw, believe me. I don't like doing it on the table saw, but it's the tool that I have. These are 2x2, which gives me a little bit of room to take this down to 1.5 inch. And then from there, cut each pin. I'm going to start by mounting it in the jaws of my chuck and bringing up the tailstock and getting it round. Then I will establish my first 1.5 inch in diameter shoulder and start working on the actual piece in regards to, 3/4 inch shaft and the half inch conical end there. If I work this right, I'm going to get 1, 2, 3 out of each. Well, I've made myself 4 of these. That way I have a little extra room in case I make some mistakes, or in case one doesn't hold up and cracks. I've got enough elm milled that I can make some extras. And any extras that are acceptable, I'm going to send on to the customer to make sure that if they have any problems or breakage, they're able to replace it with a pin already there in their possession.